Mere good governance is not enough. It has to be pro-people and proactive. Good governance is putting people at the center of the development process. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is Sri Lanka's present political climate. Joining us this evening on the show are Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament, now Councillor, the Untitled Municipal Council, representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Dr. Mahim Mendis, representing the Samag Jana Balawegaya, as well as Mr. Upul Jayasuriya, President's Council, and also former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Let's start off tonight's show with Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament, Councillor, Devila Mount Lebanon Municipal Council. Mr. Gunasekara, there are a lot of discussions in the recent past about new leadership, the importance of having a new leadership in the country. And your leader, former President Maithripala Sirisena, says that await a new SLFP-led government in the future. What does he mean by that? There is no election in the near future, that is for sure. But he seems to be very optimistic about forming a government led by the SLFP. What does it mean?
Well, the question is, I personally do not know exactly what he means, but I presume that because of the things that are happening in the country, he feels that there could be some sort of a change. I don't know. I'm not privy to any of the discussions as to whether they were held or whether they have already taken place. I don't know.
Mr. Gunasekara, the statement was made by the former head of state at an event at the Sri Lanka Freedom Party headquarters to inaugurate the new media center, where even power was disconnected at that time, unfortunately. So this was a startling revelation as far as the leader of the SLFP is concerned. Does that mean that the SLFP is going to break away from the SLPP and stand independent in the parliament or join hands with the opposition in the future?
Well, if I quote the incident, or if I quote the last Central Committee meeting, there was no such decision taken, and it was put off for the next month.
This is a political gimmick.
Pardon?
This is a political gimmick.
No. I said at the Central Committee meeting.
Okay, so this is to just tell the people we are trying to move away from the government, but they don't want to do it.
No. I said it will be taken up at the next meeting.
So the recent meeting was held when, Mr. Gunasekara?
Mid-January.
Mid-January. So this was on the 10th of January he said this. So there can't be any opportunity for this to be raised in the recent committee meeting that was held.
Correct.
Why didn't they do it?
No, this is not a question that I can answer, no, because it's a statement by the President of the party. As to what he meant, as to whether he has plans, we don't know. But whatever it is, it has to be discussed at the party subsequently.
Yeah, but Mr. Gunasekara, you very well know you are a member of the Central Committee of the SLFP. The President alone of the party can't make decisions by himself. The Central Working Committee has to give the nod as well at the end of the day. And that's how the party constitution of the SLFP has been formed. And you are telling me now that this was not a political gimmick, but this was just to
we do not know
the public
whether it was
about
discussed at the Politburo. We don't know.
Okay.
That's always a possibility.
Right. So, Mr. Gunasekara, one of the SLFP stalwarts, that is the senior deputy chairman of the SLFP, you must be knowing him very well, Mr. Mahinda Amaravira, said that we have a new group of intelligent minds. Now, we've heard this intelligent minds notion for a very long time. Now, we heard the Vyatmaga members who are the intellectual individuals of the SLPP trying to handle the country's governance structure in the island nation, and that has been a total disaster at the moment. Then we hear the 43rd Brigade being formed by Partly Champika Ranamaka, again talking about intelligent people surrounding them. Tell me a little bit about this intelligent people surrounding the SLFP. Just name a few people. I just want to clarify that position of the minister himself.
Sure, it's not correct for me to mention names, but what he said, I don't know. He must be having his own reasons as to why he said that. But you need intelligent people to run a country.
Absolutely. Right now, the way we are going now, Mr. Gunasekara, intelligent people is a must to the country.
Correct.
That's a different story altogether. But who are these intelligent people?
Well, he would have had his reasons as to why he said that. I do not know as to on what grounds he said that. But maybe they have earmarked people. We don't know.
Now, when you say, Mr. Gunasekara, that you don't know what the president meant, when you say you don't know what the senior deputy chairman of the SLFP meant, it seems to me that all these people are trying to appease the masses of the country, but not taking logical decisions as to how the country should be run.
Shami, the question is very simple. If you ask me as to how the country should be run, it's a very simple answer. You need good minds to run a country.
But when I'm asking you who these minds are, you're not even mentioning that, Mr. Gunasekara.
No, you need good minds. It's not correct for me to mention names. You need good minds.
So there
if
are
you mention names, I will tell you whether it's good or bad.
So there are a certain amount of people surrounding the SLFP at the moment who are intelligent.
There has to be. No, otherwise we can't. I mean, surely this party cannot survive.
Because those intelligent people, Mr. Gunasekara, were not there when the Easter Sunday bomb attacks took place, the 52-day government was formed. Then the SLFP didn't have these intelligent people. So I'm trying to wonder, who are these new intelligent people that you're talking about?
Those are situations that have taken place. As to why and what, we can always argue.
So Mr. Gunasekara, what you're trying to say in short is the pack has been shuffled, but the jokers remain.
No, I did not say that. You are saying it.
No, I am not saying, because you're not even mentioning, Mr. Gunasekara.
No, you ask me questions, I will answer. Because now, if you ask me
surrounding the SLFP,
you got to understand, a party consists of many people, and a party has a Politburo, a Central Committee, etc., etc. And there are discussions that are taking place within the Politburo, within the Central Committee. All those things do take place. As to what happens in every forum, I don't know. But at one point or other, things will have to come into the picture open, and it will be debated at the Central Committee. What I said is there were views that are raised at a previous meeting, but I'm sure it will be raised back again at the next meeting.
But don't you think, Mr. Gunasekara, that this is the right time for the SLFP to break away from the SLPP and show their strength as an independent political party? Isn't this the time?
You have a point there as to whether we should make the move now. Yes, you have a point, because when you look at the people of this country, you have to be on their side. To be on their side, if you think leaving is the best way out, yes, they should leave.
But they don't do that, Mr. Gunasekara.
I mean, these are matters which have to be discussed. No, you and I or 2-3 people cannot decide on those things. It's a discussion that has to take place. It's a wide discussion that has to take place. And thereafter only we'll have to come to some agreement or settlement as to what we are going to do.
Mr. Gunasekara, looking at the history of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which was formed by the well-renowned Bandaranaike family very long time ago, I recollect even individuals like the Munnakulamas played a big role in the 1950s to form the SLFP. And recently, the daughter of the former president of the SLFP, Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, said that this party has been ruined by 2 individuals. One, she named President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Second was the leader of the SLFP. What are your thoughts?
Well, she's entitled to her opinion because it's her father and mother who built up the party. I think she has every right to come out with those statements as to whether this is right or wrong.
No, I'm asking, what is your opinion? Do you think that President Mahinda Rajapaksa and President Maithripala Sirisena should be held responsible for the deteriorating situation of the SLFP at the moment?
Well, as to why the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa broke away, I still don't know. I still don't know, and I still don't understand as to why he did it.
You don't know what happened in 2015, right after the presidential election in the country?
No. As to why he did it. Because there was a strong party. And all those people in this...
That is because President Maithripala Sirisena wanted to become the president of the SLFP at that time.
Pardon?
That is because President Maithripala Sirisena wanted to become the president of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. That is why Mahinda Rajapaksa had to leave the party. You recollect very well that individuals like Faisal Mustafa went to the Supreme Court, took an injunction order as well. You can't remember all this, Mr.
No, the question, you got it wrong, I think. Whether the
correct me.
Whether the presidency was given or not is something that you don't seem to know.
That is up for debate, Mr. Gunasekara, because after some time,
that is certainly up for debate.
After some time, President Mahinda Rajapaksa at a press conference said, Mr. Gunasekara, if you don't recollect right, he said, I never gave the presidency of the SLFP to President Maithripala Sirisena. So politicians, you can't anyway believe him, Mr. Gunasekara. Do you agree?
No, the question is, you don't know as to why he said that. But there's one thing very clear, as it was given to him. That's what was
when President Mahinda Rajapaksa doesn't even have track of the 40 million rupees that was in his bank account, can you ask him anything more, Mr. Gunasekara?
These are matters you should clarify from Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, not me. Yeah?
Anyway.
I'm not his secretary or anybody, no.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kesalar Gunasekara.
To ask those questions.
Former Member of Parliament, Councillor of the Heavily Mountain Municipal Council. The intention of posing the questions were because you are also a politician.
I understand.
And wouldn't you know if 40 million was missing from your bank account, Mr. Gunasekara?
No, 40 million, 1,000 rupees missing, I would have known. Not 40, 1,000.
Right.
I would have known.
So you can imagine how rich the former president is on that front. Anyway, moving on, I want to move my attention to Dr. Mahim Mendes from the Samagi Jana Balawegya. Dr. Mendes, a lot of people direct a lot of questions to the opposition right now, saying that the opposition is split. And this was very evident recently also when you had the 43rd Brigade's convention. And at this convention, you saw many individuals of the SJB attending as well, individuals to the tune of Talatatu Korala, Kumar Welgama, Ranjit Madhima Bandara, and also Mano Ganesan attended the event in question. Are there any splits in the opposition?
Right. There isn't any reason for us to believe that there is a split. There is no split. As you know, Samagi Jana Balawegya is an alliance in itself. There is Sri Lanka Muslim Congress to so many parties. And you were mentioning Mr. Ranavakar's movement called the 43 Brigade. He has every right to organize his movement, but they are members of the Samagi Jana Balawegya, which is a formidable opposition, the main opposition party in the country. And as for people attending their meeting, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Anyone who is invited, who wants to go, if I wanted to go, I would have gone, right? Anyone can go.
You are telling me the 43rd Brigade, which was chaired by partly Champika Ranavakar, didn't have the courtesy to invite leader of the opposition, Sajid Premadasa, for this event?
Well, I don't know whether he has invited the party leader, the leader of the Samagi Jana Balawegya. These are constituent elements of the Samagi Jana Balawegya.
He conveniently...
And I have every reason to believe he has invited, or maybe...
he conveniently invited the secretary of the SJB.
He has invited?
The secretary of the SJB.
He has invited?
Yeah, Ranjit Madhu Bandara was invited.
So what is the problem?
No, he didn't...
What is the problem?
So are you trying to tell me that he didn't invite the leader of the party, Sajid Premadasa, for the meeting?
Well, whether he invited the party leader, I really don't know. What I'm saying is there's absolutely no harm, there's nothing wrong in any of these constituent elements of the Samagi Jana Balawegya having their own meetings. They have to organize their own parties. If the SLMC has a meeting, they can invite any of these constituent parties. If Mr. Mano Ganesan wants to have his meeting, they can invite. So there is no problem. This is a very, very formidable opposition party, as you know, the country's main opposition party, and it has constituent elements. And all those elements have to be strong.
So, Dr. Mendes, we've had a lot of political actors on this show before as well. One of them was Kirti Dannakoon. He said there are 7 members who are attached with the SJB who are trying for the top spot or the top job in Sri Lanka, which means the presidency of the country. And he mentioned that partly Champika Ranawaka is vying for this position, Sarath Fonseca is vying for this position, leader of the SJB, Sajith Premadasa is vying for this position, and failed to mention the other 4 individuals who are vying for this position as well. However, my question to you is very simple. Do you see a threat to the position of Sajith Premadasa to contest the future election as the presidential candidate of the SJB?
As far as I'm concerned, Samagi Jana Balavegia is led by a very formidable personality, and that is Sajith Premadasa. We know what the election results happen to be in Colombo district at the general elections, right? Okay. And there is no dispute that Mr. Sajith Premadasa is the most formidable leader of the SJB. He's the opposition leader, and there cannot be, at this moment of time, I don't see anyone challenging his leadership.
But is it right to make a comparison, Dr. Mendes? Now you are trying to vaguely tell me or the viewers.
Nothing vague. Very clearly, I told you. I told you.
Let me finish.
Sajith Premadasa is the formidable leader, the most formidable personality in this party.
But you're trying to vaguely tell me.
Can be very smart.
But you're trying to vaguely tell me. I'm not talking about that. No. Let me tell you where you are vague. You're trying to tell me that partly Champika Ranawaka was 5th in the Colombo district in the SJB list at the last parliament election. Sajith Premadasa became 1st in the list of the Colombo district in the last parliament election. There are many individuals like Mujibur Rahman or Marika or Harsha De Silva who came before partly Champika Ranawaka. Henceforth, he is not suitable to lead the country.
Who is not suitable to lead the
partly
country?
Champika Ranawaka.
I did not say that anyone else is not suitable.
Yeah.
At this moment of time,
that's why I said you were very vague there.
SJB is led by a very formidable personality, and that is Sajith Premadasa. And you were talking about Mr. Champika Ranawaka. And as you know, at the general elections, he came probably maybe 5th. Mujibur Rahman was more popular. Mr. Marika was more popular. Dr. Harsha De Silva, more popular. If they say they are also interested in becoming the leader one day, well, there's no problem. In a democratic party, all can have healthy aspirations. There is no problem, right? We wish them well. But at this moment of time, they all should remember, we all know, the ordinary man in the streets know clearly, and even members of the other political parties know well, the Sajith Premadasa is the most formidable leader of the SJB.
My question to you is, Dr. Mendes, when there is so much of things happening in Sri Lanka at the moment, look at what happened today with Minister of Trade, Bandulu Gunawardhan, announcing that coconut prices in the Satsa outlets would be at 75 rupees. Joke. When the Minister of Agriculture is saying that 40,000 million rupees will be allocated for insurance as an attempt for the failed organic ambition of the president. What is it? There is no basis to it. When a budget was passed last year, and then a new incentive was given to the public sector amounting to 200 billion Sri Lankan rupees. Where was this funds going to be found? No one answers. It's absolutely in disarray right now as far as the governance structure in Sri Lanka is concerned. And the opposition is having fights over leadership.
Who said that the opposition SJB is having a fight over leadership?
This is what is projected to the outside world. Now you are inside the political party, Dr. Mendes, so you are not seeing this. Probably you are clouded by all these problems. No, but as outsiders, they may say, why is the opposition fighting when there are many problems that need to be dealt with at this very moment? What is your answer?
So that is exactly what the SJB is doing countrywide, organizing the masses. The lead is all the time traveling, organizing the people. And there is absolutely no dispute. There is no internal dispute about leadership, and of course some people would like to create disputes and create truths out of untruths, and they are entitled to do so, right? And the people, of course, one thing is very clear: for the government, or for the UNP, or for you see any other, you see the JVP, the JJB, it looks like the common enemy at the end of the day in the political contest for power is the SJB and the leader of the SJB. We know that the two parties that in the south that came, below Sajid Premadasa had an extremely poor show, whether it be the JJB or UNP polling even less than the JJB, right? Less than 400,000 votes, right? Of course, they would like to see disputes in the SJB. They are entitled to create truths out of untruths in order to gain some sort of, you see, way forward, right? That is understandable. But as far as the people of this country are concerned, there is no dispute within the SJB, the most formidable opposition party as you see. There is no dispute for leadership.
There is only one leader.
There is only one leader, very clearly. Very clearly.
So there are no cracks within the SJB at the moment.
I mean, why should, if anyone wants to see, anyone wants to believe that there are cracks in a political party, they are entitled to, say what they have to say. And we as a democratic party, a truly democratic party, which believes in internal democracy, unlike most of the other parties, we would like people to raise questions within the party, from the party leadership, even the working committee meetings. We can challenge the leader. There is no problem, right? No one is going to be sacked from the party for doing that. But I must tell you very, very clearly, there is no challenge for the party leadership. No one is as popular in the opposition as Mr. Sajid Premadasa.
But given your argument, Dr. Mendes, it's very clear that you don't have to necessarily be contesting an election to show whether or not you have the public support. Now, take an individual like Gotabaya Rajapaksa for an example. He has never contested an election. He contested an election, then he became the president of the country. So that is not a ground or a premise for you to say that someone is unpopular than person A or B or C or D.
Someone is unpopular in the sense, now you are talking about whom?
I'm talking about partly Champika against Sajid Premadasa.
No, I'm not, you see, as far as I'm concerned, I have absolutely no reason to be talking about partly Champika Ranavaka. Right? He is a constituent element of the SJB.
So you won't be surprised.
Mr. Ranavaka?
So you won't be surprised if he contests the next presidential election as a common candidate or a candidate all by himself.
If he desires, if he aspires to be a presidential candidate, well, we wish him well. That is up to him, no?
All right.
Our party is led by Mr. Sajid Premadasa.
Thank you very much.
If Ranavaka wants, he can. Let him go, and we wish him well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahim Mendes, representing the Samaggi Jana Balawega today. We now move our attention to President's Council, Mr. Pul Jayasuriya, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Ms. Jayasuriya, nice to have you on the show after a very, very long time. I hope you are keeping well and safe despite COVID and all that and more. My question to you is very simple, Mr. Jayasuriya. Now, in the recent past, we saw a lot of appointments made by the President being reversed. We saw all individuals resigned. We saw individuals, recently we saw Susil Premajayanta's state ministerial portfolio was ripped from him. We saw P.B. Jayasundara, the secretary to the president, resigning from his position as the secretary to His Excellency President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Then we saw the the secretary to the Minister of Agriculture resigning from his post as well over a statement that he made saying that the organic fertilizer ambition of the government is not prudent. So we've we've seen a lot of actions in the recent past with regard to how the country is being managed. Do you think this is the best way to move forward in a democracy?
Well, there are different ways and angles that one can look at that kind of a situation. One way you can say that the people who are tendered their resignation, they have been very independent, and they found at a certain point of time that they were unable to carry on with in accordance with their conscience, and then they have tendered their resignation and then moved on. Or on the other hand, somebody might say, no, the going is tough for the public servants at this moment of time, and the economy is not doing well. We are having so many problems with regard to the availability of essential items like the food, the milk powder, the kerosene oil, then so many other things, gas, and even availability of electricity. So these are day-to-day requirements of the people. So when you find within a certain framework, these individual personalities can't find solutions to them, because this is a larger picture that you have to look at. So individuals can't find solutions to those issues. It should be a concerted effort by a government, where the government is facing issues with regard to the foreign exchange being available for the import of the essential items. Well, unfortunately, this is the first time in Sri Lanka. We have had power cuts before this. We have had shortages of fuel. We have had shortage of milk powder. We have a shortage of many items. But this is the first time that we are going through this situation where everything is falling into place rather at one and the same time. We are having shortages of all these things for one reason. That is the availability of foreign exchange. It never happened that we had a situation of fuel not being available because foreign exchange was not available. Maybe the ship got delayed or something like that. Maybe the milk powder ship has got delayed or something. They were waiting for the price increase by the authorities concerned for different reasons. But here all these things are coming to a bit of a grinding halt, including the agriculture sector, where the farmers are finding extremely difficult to cope up with the organic fertilizer, the availability of organic fertilizer, or now the availability of even inorganic fertilizer due to the prices that are now increased. So there are different, for all these non-availabilities is all for one reason. So I think by and large it's an issue that has to be tackled by the government. Yeah. If the government can tackle that issue, I think most of these heads of these institutions would have been still working.
Yeah. Mr. let's break these problems into the issues that we are facing at the moment. You mentioned the milk powder crisis, the sugar crisis, so on and so forth. And one of the crises that you mentioned was the power crisis that we are experiencing at the moment. I recently saw the current government saying since 2014, no megawatts have been added to the national grid when the previous Yahapalne government was in power. Now, you were also the former chairman of the Board of Investments in Sri Lanka, and you were also somewhat directly or indirectly involved with the Yahapalne government. In your opinion, do you think the failure of the Yahapalne government between 2015-2019 to not add any megawatt to the national grid had really led to the situation that we are facing at the moment, and it is not really a foreign currency issue that we are facing at the moment?
It's a good question. I must say this problem of not adding additional megawatts to our national grid started well before the 2015 of the new government. There were at least 5 companies at the time when I became the chairman of the Board of Investments. There were at least 5 companies that were willing to invest in LNG power generation. Right? I can name some of them. Aloka Limited is a foreign company collaboration. and Shapoorji and Pallonji. There were 5 foreign companies. Now these companies were willing to offer power to the grid at a cost of between 7 to 11 cents per unit. Now at that time dollar was about much less, maybe about 150 rupees. So that should have come to about maybe 11 to 12 rupees at that time. But it was not allowed. It was not allowed. Why was it not allowed? Now the government wouldn't have had to invest a dollar into those huge investments. The total investment from those 5 companies was going to be something like $4.5 billion. And all that money would have come from the foreign investors. So from the previous...
So why wasn't it allowed?
From the previous regime of prior to 2015, it was never allowed. Because there is a coterie of people who are in this power sector. It's a mafia kind of a thing. They are not allowing, most of the engineers are also working with them. Look at now they are talking about private power. At what price are you going to buy them? There were certain shortages. They were buying power at 56 rupees, running up to 56 rupees. Now this is power that was offered by these people, the foreign investors, at maybe 11 to maximum 15 rupees per unit, right? And they were not going to charge even for idle power. Now when I was talking about it, so many people were up in armor against me. Now then what happened? No, it was not that it was not added. Then they started with so many other power companies, Leco and Lanka transformers, and then they started investing. These are government institutions. They are not private bodies. They are private companies that are fully owned by the Lanka transformers. 70% is owned by the CEB. Right? It is the CEB engineers who are heading there. Now they started new projects like the Lakdanavi and all that started during that time, or even prior to that. Why are they going for that kind of state investments in the power generation? With their procurement. When there is procurement, there is money. People, that's where the carrot is.
Yeah, but
that's where the sweetness comes in.
But
so they are not allowing the investors to come and invest and then give power to the national grid. They want to invest. They want to go for procurement. They can make some money, and they have reserved it for themselves as a state venture, which is a state venture that is running at a profit. Nothing. Nothing. The state should never be getting involved in investments.
No, Mr. Jayasuriya, that is where, when you were appointed as the chairman of the BOI, for you to expedite and make sure, see, they say, Mr. Jayasuriya, you don't have to be a leader that takes good decisions. You have to be a leader who takes firm decisions for the betterment of the country. So given that fact, if you consider that fact, so you, as the BOI chairman at that time, could have executed these plans and made sure that we added the much needed foreign exchange that you're talking about, approximately around 4.5 billion US dollars, as FDIs to the country. And why wasn't it done at that time?
Yes. For the BOI to sign that contract, it's a very good question that you're asking. For the BOI to sign that agreement under Section 17 of the BOI law, we have to get the power purchase agreement from the CEB. If the CEB doesn't give the power purchase agreement, then we can't sign the BOI agreement. That's why it gets blocked. I have had meetings with Mr. Bhattakota, the Secretary to Power and Energy Ministry, many meetings. I have taken this up at many other meetings, also at the Treasury level and also at Temple Trees, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Management. I was just bulldozed, and they said, no, it was not our problem. Let the CEB handle that. But the investment was coming through the BOI. So we had a role to play in that. So we were pushing for it. When finally, at the end of the day, we were getting booted out, saying that if the CEB is not signing the power purchase agreement, that's not your problem. So unfortunately, it had to end up nowhere.
No, but at least at that time, even during the Yapalne government, Mr. Jayasuriya, there seemed to be some level of coordination between these units, isn't it? With what you are trying to tell us now, nothing had fallen into place even at that time, because right now we have a problem. You have the Minister of Energy saying that he is not going to give fuel to the Minister of Power, and the Minister of Power saying, if I don't get fuel, then I won't be able to give you electricity. So right now there seems to be a political tug of war between the two political parties who are in the SLPP at the moment. But it wasn't the case with the Yapalne government, is it? Was it the same case?
I'll tell you, You were also telling me what did I do as a chairman of the BOI without having to push this investment.
Yeah, because now if you look at it, Mr. Jayasuri, fingers can be pointed and directed at you as well, because
yes,
since 2014 to 2019 you
that is what I am trying to explain. Yeah. Now during that period, right, Prime Minister Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe was not interested in the BOI at all, right? He was pushing for another law called the Agency for Development. It never became the law. For 5 years it was in the draft format, it never became the law. But even in the process of drafting the Agency for Development law, BOI was never consulted. But in the meantime, you know that the most powerful mechanism in the BOI is the Schedule B, where BOI becomes authority for those acts that are mentioned in the Schedule B, which are including the exchange control law, immigration law, inland revenue law, and customs law, and few others. There is a new new exchange control law that is not in the Schedule B. So we are out of it. We can't do any more facilitation. The new inland revenue law, which is not in the Schedule B, so BOI is out of it. So BOI is like a toothless lion. Then when you come to the customs law, the customs are a law unto themselves. Whatever the BOI directs them, there is no response from them. So this is why I'm saying that we had to, after 40 years of the BOI law, we had to amend that and then bring it to the current situation, to bring in more laws into that, and then there should have been some kind of deem approvals where the BOI sits on top of everything else, and then once they give the approval, that everyone else has to follow suit. But that these changes were never done. I wish at least if they are done today, that we can move forward and trust the investments.
So the resignation of Sanjay Mahotala as the BOI chairman a few months ago is justifiable now, because the BOI is a toothless lion. Is it so?
I don't know exactly the reason why it led to his resignation, but I still insist on saying BOI that was brought in as a one-stop shop has today become a non-stop shop. Right. So I won't be surprised when India, during the COVID situation, their FDIs have gone up by $200 billion. In Bangladesh, the COVID situation, it has gone up by $20 billion. In Sri Lanka, pre-COVID situation, we had meager $1.5 billion that came into this country, has dropped down to $400 million last year. So who will come to this country to invest if this is the kind of situation, if the BOI is totally hapless, I would say more than hapless kind of situation. They are unable to do anything to attract an investor to come and invest in this country. More than anything else, there are judgments that are given by courts of law, affirmed by the apex court, the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka, not honored by the government of Sri Lanka. So where can you, would investors have any confidence in coming in for public-private partnership with the government of Sri Lanka? I'm not pointing at any particular party. Whether it happened during the previous regime or it is happening during the present regime.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buljayasuri, President's Council, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. When we are in a country, Mr. Jayasuri, where artists go to the chairman of Avantgarde, who was embroiled in a lot of cases, to secure the release of former Member of Parliament Ranjan Ramanayaka. What else can we say, Mr. Jayasuri? This is the country that we're living in at the moment, unfortunately. Anyway, I open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my immediate right is Naveksha Nigunasekara. Immediate left is Hassan Shazuli. Let's start off with the lady. Sure. Yeah, okay. Yes.
Thanks, Shami.
Yeah, Naveksha.
My question is to you, Dr. Mendes. Now, we see a lot of protests currently in the country, across the country basically, and especially the farmers' protests opposing the organic fertilizer. My question to you is, how much of these protests are organic as opposed to being implemented by opposition?
Can you repeat this question?
My question is, how much of these protests are organic as opposed to being implemented by the opposition, pun intended?
Well, I'm still not getting the question well.
So you see, most of this, what I understand is, what we've seen is that the members of the government are accusing the opposition, saying that you people are, sort of posing these protests and staging these protests by, you know...
All right, staging, that is
Orchestrated.
what you mean, orchestrated.
Orchestrating.
Right, okay. Well, there is nothing for the opposition to really orchestrate, you see, scheme and you see, engineer a process of protest, because the farmers are furious. Not only the farmers are furious, the whole country is in anger, frustration.
But something that a normal someone from the general public would say is that all these farmers, all these boards that they hold and everything looks the same. How can, you know, the same farmers of one sector of the country, how can it be all the same fonts, same colors, you see all of that, all protests, everything looks the same? How is it so? How can there be so much uniformity?
Of course, that's fair enough for them to say, because the main opposition, the SJB, is, you know, involved in the protests. They have to give formidable support to the farmers, the fishermen, and whoever who is protesting, because that is in their best interest to be with the people, because they expect, the people who are affected severely expect the main opposition parties also to be involved in organizing them and, you know, giving them strength. Solidarity, you call it, right? Same with the JVP. Now the JVP, whatever the banners and the placards and all that, will look basically the same maybe, because they have a culture of doing things. SJB has a culture of doing things.
So is it right when the government is saying that the opposition is planning all of this to disrupt their organic, so the green agriculture program and so on?
There is no green agriculture program for anyone in the right senses in this country to talk about. This is a joke, and we all know what has happened to the green policy and this fertilizer issue. We all know the livelihoods, the way of life of the people, the farming community is totally destroyed by a foolish government, a mindless government, which has taken a disastrous policy. You see, with, you know, arbitrarily, in an ad hoc manner, they have played the fool with the farming community, right? So there is no policy to talk about. What is the policy we are talking about? Is there a proper policy called green agriculture in this country? Right. The farmers are at the receiving end of foolish policies, mindless policies. So the farmers are furious. They have to protest, because if they don't protest, I mean, why should they not protest?
So what will the SJB do apart from protesting and apart from, you know, supporting the farmers to protest? I mean, there is only so much you can do by protesting.
Right. The SJB's policy with regard to agriculture is very clear enough. Sustainable agriculture policy, you see, of the SJB, they have already issued the policy statement, the charter, agriculture charter, just a few days ago, right? And I think the leader of the party has even gone to the extent, if the press is right, the media has reported it right, that he will personally take over that ministry, agriculture and irrigation, if there's a SJB government. And he has very clearly told the farming community as to what he believes in by way of a sustainable, viable, pragmatic agriculture policy for this country.
You said if there is an SJB government, will there ever be an SJB government?
Obviously. The most formidable opposition party and the most formidable opposition leader definitely will be the viable alternative to Gotabaya Rajapaksa government.
Dr. Mendes,
no doubt.
Dr. Mendes, now since we are talking about this whole issue, I think in your opening remarks as well, we were talking about whether there is a split or rift developing within the opposition itself. You said, you know, who said there is a fight between the opposition, everything is hunky-dory. But do you remember last year that a group of SJB MPs met with Patali Champikaranawaka at Parliament when he formed the 43rd Brigade? Do you recall that?
Yeah, now, just a while ago, this gentleman said that when he had a convention recently, there were SJB MPs who were present. And I think he tried to say...
But not the leader, not the leader.
Pardon?
The leader was not there, but the other members.
Yeah, so it is, I mean, if Mr. Mano Ganeshan or Mr. Rauf Hakim who are constituent elements of the Samagi Jana Balavegaya, right, invite members of the SJB Politburo, the Central Committee, right? I'm also in the Politburo, the working committee of the party. If anyone is invited, right, they can go. I mean, there's no problem.
Dr. Mendes, you say
there shouldn't be any problem.
Yes, I understand, but you say now there is no rift in the opposition at present.
Yeah.
Let's, for the sake of argument, let's accept that. But in your opinion, considering our history as far as coalition governments are concerned and how merging of parties takes place just before an election, and considering how successful we have been, which we have not been, don't you see a rift emerging in the future? Because if you take a look at the statements that Patali Champikoranokka was making very recently, he was clearly articulating the fact that he wants to provide a leadership for a common political platform. And then we have opposition leader Sajith Premadasa also saying that he wants to provide the leadership. Don't you feel that there is a possibility that a rift might emerge? Because let's talk about, let's say, Anuru Kumara Disanayake is not part of the SJB. So I mean, we can exclude him. But Patali Champikoranokka is part of the SJB, and he still makes statements about wanting to have the leadership. Don't you feel that this would lead to a rift?
He is entitled to say what he has to say. That is democratic freedom, right? If Mr. Manu Ganeshan says the same thing, that is his freedom to say that, right? Anyone can aspire to be a common candidate. But as far as SJB is concerned, a party with internal democracy, I'm emphasizing internal democracy. The United National Party collapsed basically without it, right? And the will of the majority will be supreme, right? If the majority of people do not want Mr. Sajith Premadasa, obviously he cannot be the leader of the UNP, of the SJB. Now very clearly, it has to be democratically contested, right? Anyone, when it comes to the presidential candidature, if someone is putting forward himself, herself as a possible candidate, that will then enter into contest. But I don't think such a thing will happen, because we have an undisputed leader in the SJB called Sajith Premadasa.
No, Dr. Mendes, the question is not about the SJB being a democratic party. It's not a question.
Very important.
It's not a question about whether or not individuals are trying to raise their hand in terms of party leadership. The question is, when the country is facing a dilemma at the moment, what are these elements in the SJB doing without focusing on the core matter at hand right now, that is to fight for the people's rights? What are they doing?
Right, that's a separate question. Are you satisfied, gentlemen, with my answer to your previous question?
No, you can answer this question and then we can follow up.
Okay.
Don't worry,
so,
Dr. Mendes. Yes.
You're satisfied, right? Now,
Yes,
this is a separate question.
Yeah.
The separate question. Well, as far as the SJB leadership is concerned and the parliamentary group is concerned, you know, every single parliamentary session, they make their presence very clearly felt. At this moment of time, inside, outside Parliament, the SJB is extremely active, explaining what it will do in the context of social,
I don't
economic,
believe this.
political, cultural, moral
Dr. Mendes, recently the Korean delegation was in Parliament. There was no decorum, there was no ample members in Parliament present at that time. So you're saying
Very
the SJB is from both ranks, the government and the opposition, both.
Yeah.
So where is the SJB? What is the SJB talking about their presence being felt in Parliament?
So now you're talking about an isolated parliamentary session. Generally,
It's not isolated.
Well,
it is not isolated.
Sure. Generally,
we are electing 225 members to Parliament, not to go.
We cannot generalize and say that every single parliament session is like that. Obviously, you will not say that. Right? Parliamentarians who are able to speak. And you know, if there are members of Parliament in the SJB who will not speak, there's a problem, right? All these members of the SJB are very, very vibrant in what they have to say. There's no doubt about that. and they are with the people at the moment. You know,
Not one voice. There are different voices. That's true, Dr. Mendis. No, there is no one voice.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you're trying to say, right? The SJB does not say anything in one voice, but there are different elements in the party who makes noises at a given time. You know, like Party Champion Ranaka might say something, Rauf Hakim might say something, Rishad Badruddin can say something, then Mano Ganeshan can say something, Sajid Premadasa can say something, not collectively. They don't believe in that.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
No, I'm saying what you are saying.
See, the thing is this. SJB has its own policy statement. They had their policy statement at the general elections, and I don't think any of these gentlemen that you're talking about say things contradicting the SJB's policies. Right? They have to, of course, they have their style of speaking. They will have to articulate issues in the way they want, right? They have their unique, distinct characteristics, right? Okay. So that's the way democratic parliamentarians should be. They are not robots.
But I have heard, of course, Dr. Mendis, based on Latimer House principles, of course, there has to be collective responsibility right throughout
so is there any
through a
sort
political
of
party.
contradiction? Did Mr. Premadasa and so, Mr. Rauf Hakim, on the ethno-political crisis or anything else, on national security, did they say contrary things? Can you give an example?
No, I'm saying at least they're holding separate meetings.
Because,
No, that's what I'm saying. They're holding separate meetings.
You're challenging me?
No, they're holding separate meetings and expressing their views separately, not collectively.
Well,
if the 43rd Brigade was the best example, that was held the meeting we held recently with regard to having a difference of opinion in the political fora as far as the SJB is concerned, the best example would be the 43rd Brigade. Where was the leader of the opposition at that meeting?
There could be a 54th Brigade and all sorts of brigades, right? That's a different, I mean, members of those brigades, the sympathizers,
right. So
are entitled to
let's ask
democracy.
Let's ask Mr. Jayasuri. Mr. Jayasuri, now you were a staunch supporter of Sajid Premadasa for a very long time. Do you think that Sajid Premadasa is the leader that everyone is envisaging to take Sri Lanka in the next 5 years forward after a presidential election is held?
I'll give a short answer and a long answer.
Yes, please.
Well, he's the only leader that is available in the opposition that has a capability of leading the country, alternatively to the present regime that we have. Well, now
so you're not seeing anyone in the opposition right now, like Anur Kumar Dissanayake can't lead the country.
Come on.
You're saying Sarath Fonseca can't lead the country.
Minority parties.
So you're saying
smaller parties. That's a process of
Tiny
democracy.
parties.
Yeah.
There are smaller parties, and they have their right to contest, and then they are making a very useful contribution to the political system in this country. That's a different.
But
matter.
they'll never form a government.
That's a reality, no? We know, and you know, we had a traditional left in this country. That was the Lanka Samajwadi Party and the Communist Party.
Now forget about the Lanka Samajwadi Party and the Communist Party. Now the state of the two political parties.
There out of 196, no, less than
60.
that, 160 seats. They used to get at least 17 to 25 seats in the country. Right? The entire coastline was theirs. But now they had that left, traditional left has dwindled and now come down to the JVP. So they are making a good dent in the system where they have been respected by the people, and then they are coming out with some good ideas. That's not the issue. Now you are talking about, I was just enjoying the kind of question that you posed to Dr. Mendis also. You are always asking about Mr. Ranavaka's, I don't want to get into this argument between the two of you, but
there is no argument, it's only for public interest.
Just making this comment. Yeah. You remember, I would like to take you back in the memory lane a few decades. You remember the time of Laddi Naik regime, end of that, coming back to Jaya Javadan Reddy's regime, Mr. R. Premadasa went around with Purvasi Peramuna. You remember that? And not that he was trying to contest on his own.
No.
Then Mr. Athura Mudri was going around with Mahapala. Right? Not that he was trying to contest against the party leadership. He was within the party.
But Gamlit Dissanayake was trying to do that.
No. No, don't make that mistake. Gamani Sanayaka is another great leader who has made a huge contribution to the economy and the agriculture and the power generation.
Absolutely, there is no question about that.
There's no question about that. I mean, he should be venerated along with
but he split from the UNP.
who is being found fault with by many parties.
But he split with the UNP. He split from the UNP in the 1990s.
No, he didn't split from the UNP. What happened was, there was a, you know what happened between Mr. Premadas and Mr. Gavan Sanak and Lalita Thulamudi.
Yes.
That's a past.
Yeah.
So anyway, there were some differences and then they started the UNF. Right now, you can see now, in the recent past,
So you are saying the UNF was just formed not to contest separately, but just for the sake of exerting some pressure.
After they were chucked out of the UNP.
That's right. So,
yeah.
so they formed that party to contest.
There is a similar thing that has been happening because the people of this country have also moved away from the traditional political parties. Now the SLP went down their lane and then ended up with whatever the number of seats that they would have got, or at least in the local election that they contested separately, they got 15 lakhs only compared with the many millions that they were getting earlier. But then immediately a new party was formed, the Pohottua party, and then came into limelight, and the SLP had to go along with the new party. Now same way the United National Party that has even enjoyed the 5-6 parliamentary majority in the parliament during JR's time had to come down to zero with great
they got one seat.
One nationalist seat.
One nationalist seat.
No. As far as election is concerned, they got nothing.
Nothing.
They got nothing. So thanks to JR, the constitution, they got one because this nationalist, right? If it is only from the election, they got nothing. So it came down to zero almost, right? But then 2 months the old party, the SJB, got 54 seats with I think 3.5 million people voting with them. But also we remember another scenario at that time. There were at least 2 million people who didn't vote. Who voted at the parliamentary election, the presidential election before, but they didn't vote. Maybe because this issue that was there between the major party, the UNP, and the newly formed SJB. So the question is whether are they going to still stay like that, or whether they are going to, now that the battle lines are drawn between those two parties, whether they are going to support the party led by Mr. Sajid Premadas. Mr. Premadas, I look at it this way. A lot of people are asking this question, same question that you are asking. I believe that's the same reason why you are asking this question, which you are entitled to. As far as the rural base in this country, they are not getting involved in the kind of splitting of hairs. What is he doing? What has he done? How the way he addresses, the way he dresses, the way he speaks. They are not bothered about those things. Sajid is the most popular figure as far as the rural base is concerned. They don't do 2 words about that. Same way that Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa is the most popular figure in that party as far as the rural base is concerned. But the UNP had an urban base also. It is an urban base that made either the UNP win or lose. It is a rural base that made the UNP win or lose. But the urban base was always with the UNP. Now, when you look at the same situation...
Yeah, but if you look at it now, we know there is not going to be an election anytime soon. At least a presidential election or a parliamentary election at the moment. Do you think the strategy adopted by the opposition led by Sajid Premadasa is doing the right thing?
The whole problem is this. There were many people, 6.9 million people who voted for this government. I mean, they had every right to do that. Probably they thought that was the best choice. But now, large majority of those people who voted with them, they wanted the government to change tomorrow. It's not going to happen. As you say, this government is going to be there for the next 3 more years. There is no question about that. Right? So we have to go through the same process. You want the SJB, the opposition party, to come out with their election manifesto tomorrow. It can't happen. It can be given, it can be put out only in view of an election around the corner.
No, but the opposition leader recently unveiled the charter for the farming community.
There is a huge problem that the farming community is facing at this moment of time. So you have to give them some fillip for them to start off and then at least some hope for the future. because it's not only the farming community due to the problems that they are facing, the people of this country are facing a huge problem, because there is already a shortage of vegetables, the rice and all that now, organic fertilizer and organic food, but I don't know, but now rice is supposed to be coming from China or India. I don't know whether they are organic rice. So with this kind of situation, the people of the country are facing the problem. It's not the farming committee. So the end result of what the farming community is going through is going to be, resultant factor is going to be from the people of this country, because we know everywhere the rice has gone up in price, sugar has gone up in price, the milk powder has gone up in price, the gas has gone up in, everything has gone up in price. So naturally the cost of living has gone up. So that's the end result, is the response is by the people.
Yeah, Mr. Gunasekara, now Mr. Jayasuri was talking about how the government is now discussing to bring down 1 million kilograms of rice from China. Now your party is somewhat part of the government. No, my question to you is this rice organic? Because we know we got the fertilizer from China, which is of organic nature, and then we had to return it, and then we had to pay $6.9 million for the fertilizer. That's a different story altogether, whether it's going to come to Sri Lanka or not. But this 1 million kilograms of rice, organic?
Technically, according to what they have preached, it has to be organic. If it is not, then it's going to be an issue. I must say that in fairness.
No, but right now in Sri Lanka there are rice from Pakistan, there is rice from India. All this rice is also organic.
No, I don't think so. I don't think what is in the market is organic. If that is the case, they would have promoted it, no, and said this is organic rice. No, I don't think so.
It's
so
not.
What has come is not. I don't think it's organic.
So then
I must be fair.
Yeah, but is it fair, if that is the case, to put the lives of the farming community in Sri Lanka in jeopardy and bring down something from an overseas nation? Now, what I don't understand is, Mr. Gunasekara, now recently Minister Bandhu Gunawardena went to Pakistan. I was not privy to that conversation that Minister Gunawardena and the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, had about the $200 million scheme that they are going to give as loans for Sri Lanka to bring down pharmaceutical products and even cement and so on and so forth. Because Pakistan has requested China to give them $1 million in return. In a situation like that, I don't think any leader is going to be prudent enough to give a $200 million loan to the country. But look at the statements that are coming out from the government. Isn't it sheer desperation? Mr. Gunasekara?
The dollar crisis is serious. That's all that I can say. The issue is very, very serious. Everybody needs to understand that. That's the whole problem.
But why are we in this situation, Mr. Gunasekara? Now, we are talking, yes, the dollar crisis is a problem. We've had respected economists on this show talking about why we are in this state of affairs at the moment. It's just not COVID. It's because the government cut down the tax revenue by 24% in 2019 when they were elected to power. The VAT was brought down, so on and so forth. Pay tax was somewhat revoked. So there were issues. In your opinion,
there were mistakes. That was made at the beginning.
So, Mr. Gunasekara, your president, your 14 members of parliament were with the government. They raised their hands for the 20th Amendment of the Constitution as well. Do you recollect, Mr. Gunasekara?
Yeah,
you don't know.
I recollect and recall not only the 20th, 17, 18, 19, 20, everything.
So the entire lot. That's what I told you, Mr. Gunasekara. The pack was shuffled, but the jokers remain. Those who voted for the 17th Amendment of the Constitution voted for the 18th Amendment of the Constitution as well. Those who voted for the 19th Amendment of the Constitution voted for the 20th Amendment of the Constitution as well. So that's the difference. So that's how politics work in Sri Lanka, Mr. Gunasekara, unfortunately. But that's not the question that I'm posing to you. My question to you is, why are we in this dilemma at the moment, politically?
I don't think you can give a political answer. I can give you an answer.
Yeah.
We are in this dilemma because we have mismanaged for for many, many years.
Mismanaged. Can I just, I'm just taking, mismanaged is your word. When the government was mismanaging for 2.5 years now, what was the SLFP doing as a constituent party, as the largest constituent party of the SLPP?
We objected to many of their programs.
Mr. Gunasekara, now
we did object to many of
on
their
that
programs.
same note, now,
and in fact, the vote to a party was not happy with some of the statements that were made by our ministers.
Mr. Gunasekara, now you are a member of the SLFP Central Committee, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Doesn't your party discuss really, what should be done? Because what we are seeing out in the media is that parliamentarians, they are expressing their objection almost every day, while continuing to hold state ministerial portfolios in the government and raising hands for the bills that the government is passing. What does the party discuss? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
No, there are discussions taking place. That's what I said. At many Central Committee meetings, there was tremendous opposition that we need to take cognizance of what is happening and then take decisions. But those are discussions that are going on. It will be taken up at the Politburo as well. So it will take time. But still,
how
for
long,
all
Mr. Gunasekara?
there is nothing that I can tell you. I mean, surely I am just a committee member, Central Committee member of the party.
No, you are representing the SLFP today, Mr. Gunasekara. Unfortunately, that is why I am saying, tell your members, the 14 members, to walk out of the government and stay independent in parliament. All these problems will be finished. I won't even pose this question to you hereafter, Mr. Gunasekara.
No, the question is, I think that is the view of many in the SLFP, yeah? That is the view of many.
Isn't this the right time to do
The
it?
question, that's what I tell you. That's the view of many in the SLFP.
Right, Mr. Gunasekara, yes, let us...
If I say so, I mean, that's reality, yeah?
Okay, let us get this clear with you. Now you tell me, what is the whole thought process behind the SLFP deciding to remain in the government? 2 years have passed, the country is in turmoil. What is the whole thought process?
It is not a question of remain, because we got into an agreement with them now. Before the elections, we got into an agreement that we'll fight together.
So it's okay, even if the people are in trouble, it's okay, you have to stick to the political agreement.
That's why I said, when the people are in trouble, we have been making statements after statements.
What is the effectiveness of them?
Which a party has not been happy.
Mr. Gunasekara, with what you are trying to tell me right now, Mr. Gunasekara, it seems to me that the SLFP will not leave the SLPP at the moment.
I didn't say that.
It seems very clear.
No, I didn't say that.
No, because you said before the elections they came into a common agreement.
No, that is exactly what happened.
Right.
Before the elections, we came into an agreement.
No? Because they could have left when the 20th Amendment to the Constitution was being brought up. They could have left when the budget was being presented. There are opportunities in the budget usually. If it's not passed with a simple majority, the government in power,
there are many of the view that we shouldn't have taken portfolios also. Many are of the view that we shouldn't have taken portfolios.
So give away the portfolios, Mr. Gunasekara.
Please do that.
Yeah,
yes.
Why are you holding on to those positions?
No, the question, these are, that's what I said. We got into an agreement to contest an election. And therefore, there are so many avenues, so many discussions that have to take place.
Mr. Gunasekara, I won't be surprised, Mr. Gunasekara. Diana Gamage would bring a private member's motion in Parliament to extend the term of the President for 2 more years. And the SLFP will go ahead and give the vote. I won't be surprised. Will that happen?
No, not only that, they will also give the vote and the next day they will come to the media and oppose that also.
Those are not things that can happen, no.
No, I don't know. You tell me.
Surely, why should we discuss matters that cannot take place? I mean,
no, these are statements that are made by parliamentarians in our Sri Lanka legislature. That's what I'm asking you.
There are so many parliamentarians who are making statements which have absolutely no meaning in the present day context,
including the SLFP members.
Maybe.
You don't want to mention names, Mr. Gunasekara. Very careful.
I mean, I have to be. Because you're asking me a question.
Yeah, can I quote a statement from one of your SLFP ministers?
Go ahead.
Right. The senior deputy chairman of the SLFP, Mr. Mahinda Samaraweera, noted that the people of this country are irritated with the so-called Vyatmaga, who call themselves intellectuals and professionals. We have a new group of intellectual minds. Now, Mr. Gunasekara, tell you who these people are. I asked this question before also. Be at least name Two people? Two intelligent people?
That question has to be posed to Mr. Mahinda Amaravir, not me.
Yeah, then there has to be a basis.
But there are intelligent people,
yeah.
Certainly.
Two people.
In your opinion, who are the two people?
There are many intelligent people.
No, two people.
No, there are many. There are many.
Right,
There are
anyway.
many in the party.
So,
don't say that.
So, Mr.
There are
Jayasurya,
many. There are so
again,
many.
it goes back. Again, it goes back to my question. If there were so many people surrounding the SLFP when the 50-day government was formed, when President was ill-advised with regard to the April 21st attacks, where would the country be today? When the Yahapalne government was appointed in 2015 to bring those corrupt individuals to book, if they were put behind bars, where would the country be today? Mr. Gundasekara, a sad state of affairs. Where were these intellectuals at that time that you're talking about? Nowhere in the scene. Were they? Nowhere. Not even in the radar. Do you agree, Mr. Gundasekara?
No, the question is there are so many mistakes that have happened in the past.
And you are saying let's appoint another SLFP government to power.
No, I said there are so many mistakes.
That is what your president said. That is what your president is saying.
You got to
await a
understand
new SLFP-led government. Minister Maitripala Sirisena.
You got to understand that people elect governments to ensure that they work towards betterment of the country, but in most cases that have not happened. It's very unfortunate.
So I have a question.
Every government tries to do that.
So there are a lot of people watching the show tonight, and I have a question for Mr. Pul Jayasurya. The question is skirting around your rejection of the JVP as a next possible alternative government in Sri Lanka. The question is, on what governing experience did Gotabaya Rajapaksa rely on before becoming president? On what governing experience did Imran Khan depend on before becoming Prime Minister? On what grounds, if I may add, the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, he had a political background. However, individuals like in France, the Prime Minister of France. So you can name a lot of examples across the world. So why are you saying that the JVP, as the member of the audience who's watching the show is posing to you, not me, Mr. Gundasekara, Ms. Jayasurya. So tell me, why are you saying that you are rejecting the JVP as an alternative government in the future?
I'm not rejecting. What I said was, it's my opinion that that JVP is making definitely a dent in the political scenario as far as the current context is concerned. But when you look at the history of the left movement in Sri Lanka, and also with the history of the JVP from starting from more than 1971, in 1988, 89 and all that, so many people died. So many other things that took place. I don't want to be referring to those issues. So the elderly generation would not try to think of the JVP as an alternate kind of situation. I've been very frank on this. But as at the moment, they are very honest. The leaders are very honest. But of course, they have been tried several times. Right? With Sandra Kumar Dissanayake, this is not the first time that he is in the parliament. This is about third or the fourth, fifth time that he is in the parliament.
He was a minister also.
He was a minister also. But when Gotabaya Rajapaksa came in,
he was a minister for a very short period of time, Dr. Mendes.
He was a fresher.
Yeah, he was a
so
fresher.
he was not tested.
He gave up his ministry, ran away.
Yeah. As far as Mr. Rajapaksa is concerned, he was not tested. So that was his advantage.
Can I correct just a second, Mr. Jayasurya? What do you mean by ran away from the portfolio?
He was a minister of agriculture, irrigation and lands. He gave certain promises to the people of this country. Yeah. He was a Vauda Hepia, right, okay. Did he at least do justice to that particular project?
Right, okay, right. Now you can continue, Mr. Jayasurya. I just want to get some clarity.
So, coming back to this situation, where as far as as far as people are concerned, they would like to try fresh blood. The same thing happened with Mr. Maitripala Sirisena, where he was never considered at that leadership as leadership material. So people didn't mind trying him out, and then went through with him.
No, Mr.
So that's what I'm trying to tell you. Yeah. But as far as the JVP leadership is concerned, they are trying to change their pattern of thinking by bringing more professionals to the scene, like Dr. Harini Amarasuriya as a nationalist MP. These are good developments in the party. So as I say, I wish that JEP plays a major role and that they get much more than what they are having at the moment in the parliament representation. I would say at least they should get about 15-20 seats. If that happens, like what happened during Mrs. Kumaratunga's regime, they will become a catalyst in a positive way, not in a negative way, with whatever the government that's going to be in power. I can't forget the fact that, no one will forget the fact that in 2000 the 17th Amendment that came into being was largely a product of the JVP, but they managed to get every member of parliament to agree for it. But if they didn't agree for it, particularly the ruling party, if the JVP walked out of the government would have crashed. Yeah. So like that, they can play a very positive role in a future government. That I have no doubt about that.
Right, Mr. Jaisu, so we have a very a question to you again from one of our viewers. Is there a possibility that if members of the government who are supporting the government at the moment move away from the present regime and support their allegiance to the opposition-led SJB, can they go for an election? If we're looking at something very short term?
Depends on how much support they can get. If they have a situation like what happened after the 52-day government, the then opposition, after Mr. Rajapaksa was installed as a prime minister, the then opposition had more numbers.
Yeah. So
then
usual
they
format
were commanding the operations.
So
likewise, if a larger chunk of the ruling party joins the opposition and then move for a dissolution, then the government will be compelled to move for an election.
So before 3 years it can happen?
It can happen.
Mr. Jayasuri, on a balance of probability, will this government be re-elected? I mean, given the fact that, they've done such poor delivery in understanding the people suffering and, addressing the problems. In your analysis, what do you think?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Oh, well, I don't want to be prophetic with regard to as to how the people are going to think about it right at this moment. But one can say, even a child can say, as at present in the country, the people are very, very dissatisfied with the performance of the regime.
Mr. Jayasuri, now when you were talking early on the show, you were expressing your views on how 6.9 million people voted for the government and now they are in a position where they want to send the government out even at this point of time. My question to you is, now given the way how things have turned out in the past, if we look at our history as well, don't you feel that the option for an alternative force declines just before an election when the government plays its vital trump cards, like let's say national security for an example? Don't you think that sort of diminishes all hopes for an alternative force? Despite the chaos that they are creating over the, let's say, for 5 years?
When you say alternate force, we are all thinking about a messiah to come from somewhere. In Sinhalese they call it Diyasena Kumaraya. I don't think it's going to happen in the modern day and age that we are talking about. It's going to be, unfortunately, it's all within the few recognized political parties that we have in the scene. It's not going to happen where unknown party, a new alternate party, these are theories that cannot be put into practice. It will never be put into practice. But if there is another breakaway party, like what happened with the SLP and the Portua party, and the SJB and the UMP, it has to happen like that. We have seen so many people, even in the past, they were performing very well with a recognized party, starting from Mr. Sirisena Kure. And he formed his own party and then he got nothing. And that happened, that was the same case with even General Fonseca. He couldn't, but he's a great asset. He's a great asset for this country as far as national security and everything is concerned. But they are an asset in a large political setup. And so is Mr. Champika Ranawaka. He's an asset in a large political setup. But if you take he himself on his own merit, I don't think he can make a dent. I can remember even President Premadasa said that during the impeachment time that was brought against him by Mr. Atal Murali and the government Sanak and the crowd. Then at that stage he was furious about the impeachment, obviously. And he was saying that even if he contests getting out of that was when Mr. Atul Mudri and Gamin Sanayaka formed the DUNF, that even if he contests from a different party other than the UMP, that people will not vote for him. But it was not the case when the new party was formed.
Yeah,
they got a huge amount of votes, and they got nearly, I think, after Mr. Atul Mudri passed away, after he was assassinated, he still got about preferences, about nearly 150,000 preferences from Colombo alone. So that shows what Mr. Premadasa said was different. But the kind of position
but don't you think
that Mr. Atul Mudri was different.
That was many years ago. That was in the late 1980s, early 1990s. If I may recollect right, when the impeachment came to play, the president at that time, Ranasinghe Premadasa, was furious over the matter and how the two senior members of the political party broke away and formed the political party in question. However, we are talking about the modern context now. Look at the way in which the SLPP was able to form a political party within a few years, and they went on to win a local government election. They went on to win a presidential election. They went on to win a general election. So we're talking about this modern day context. The people's mentalities have changed now, don't you think so? They want someone with policy. They want someone to lead. They want someone who's not a joker. They want someone to lead the country. Don't you think that is what they want?
Definitely so. But I always say, I keep saying this, it has to be from within a recognized political party. Now, take even Mr. Atul Mudri's case and the government case back again. They didn't form the party on their own. They were chucked out of the UNP at that time, and they had to form that party. And take the Porto party.
Same.
They had no alternative, but because they couldn't come with the SLP, and they had to move away. The Rajapaksas had to move away and then form their own party. And the large number of the recognized frontliners, they moved away from that SLP, the traditional SLP.
But if your argument is right, if your argument is correct, then the president of Sri Lanka should be now Sajid Premadasa.
No, there was a different problem at that moment of time.
After
the Easter bomb attack, the guns were targeted at the UMP regime at that time. So people all thought that they had failed to protect the country, and all the bond scam was there. But now the situation is different. I don't want to be commenting on those issues. But anyway, that whole scenario has now changed.
All right. So we have a question for Mr. Gunasekara as well. Is the government afraid to hold the provincial council elections?
I don't think so.
They're not afraid?
No, I don't think so.
But the SLFP, what would be the SLFP stand?
No. What I say is, they have said that they will hold elections.
Next year.
Is it next year or
not,
this
not
year?
Not in the immediate future.
This year end or next year, I don't know. Because it has to go through Parliament as well. There is a passage in Parliament as well.
Yeah, because the current act needs to be looked into.
But they have said that they are going to hold the elections. Huh? In fairness, I must say that.
Yeah, in the event there is an election, Mr. Gunasekara.
Pardon?
In the event there is an election.
In the event there is an election, we face the election. That's all.
No, SLFP position.
The SLP will face elections.
Independently.
What do you mean independent?
Without the SLPP.
Huh?
Without the SLPP.
I feel a future election, there is always a possibility that the SLP will go alone.
So that
there
is
a possibility.
Next,
I'm not saying that. This is not the SLP view.
Will that be another election that we experienced like the local government election where the SLFP's voter base came down to 1 million? Will that be another election like that, Mr. Gunasekara?
What do you mean? The voter base will come down?
No. The voter base came down at the local government election that the SLFP was independently contesting.
Yeah.
When the SLPP was contesting the elections,
yes,
it came down to 1.5 million.
Yeah, that is because majority of the members had gone on to the other party. That's under those circumstances, getting 1.6 million was big enough.
14 members of parliament, same story this
Pardon?
time. 14 members in parliament, same story this time. Next
Why?
time. I don't know, I'm asking you, Mr. Gunasekara.
No, the question is this: nobody can judge as to what is going to happen in the future. The government needs to take cognizance of that. The government has to understand that they can always turn it around, but there has to be tremendous commitment. As to whether they can do that, they are ready for it, I don't know.
Yeah, so today
But there is, I must tell you, in fairness, the role of the opposition is not to bring down the government. Huh?
Right.
Of course, in the present day context, everybody's role is to bring down a government because he won't come to power. But what I have right off.
I wish there was constructive criticism from the opposition also.
No, there should be. But what I say.
But there is nothing that the government has done right the last 2.5 years.
We are in a different scenario today. Huh?
Yeah.
We all need to get together and see how we can work this out and come to some sort of an arrangement for the next 2-3 years. And as I said before, there is not going to be a general election or a presidential election in the next 2.5 to 3 years.
Mr. Gunasekara, now please don't tell, when I ask you this question, I have to ask this from Basil Rajapaksa, the Minister of Finance.
No, I don't have to ask him. No,
I expect an answer.
I'm not a member of his party. No?
Yeah, I'm
a member of SLFP.
Yeah, okay. So that makes sense, right? I'll pose the question to you anyway. Now, today, quoting the Sunday Divina, where Basil Rajapaksa had given an interview to the newspaper. Newsfirst quoted saying, excerpts of this interview, and it says that we purchased weapons from North Korea using black market dollars. Mr. Gunasekara, can you just enlighten the viewers today what it means? Because on one side, Ajit Niwad Kabral is saying you can't bring in money from the black market. On one side, the Minister of Finance is saying during the war, we dealt with the black market. So can you explain this to our viewers? What is this disparity?
I mean, how can I explain?
How can I explain this?
I explain what he has said? There is no way that I
No,
can.
but don't you see there is a division amongst these statements that are being made now? Ajit Niwad Kabral, as the governor of the central bank, is saying if you bring down money through the black market, we will penalize you. We will take legal action. You have Basil Rajapaksa, the Minister of Finance, saying that there was a time we went to the petard dealers and asked them for foreign exchange. Now, Mr. Gunasekara, who are we to believe? The brother of the president, who is the finance minister, or the governor of the central bank?
I don't know. I have not seen that, I must tell you. But I don't know as to why he said that. But that question has to be clarified by him, not anybody else.
Who should we trust? Can we trust the government?
Pardon?
Who should we trust? Can we trust the government?
Any government has to be trusted, no? Surely that's a government.
But Mr. Gunasekara, you are sitting here and you are being very skeptic about the government.
No, what I say, it's a government, no? If you don't trust, then the government is not there.
You are being very pessimistic. Sorry, not optimistic. You are being very pessimistic of the government. And then you are telling us to trust the government also.
No, the question is this, no. If you don't trust the government, there can't be a government.
Does the SLFP trust the government, Mr. Gunasekara?
No, that is why most of the ministers have made statements against them, no?
But they continue to be in the government because they trust them.
That's a different operation altogether. You have to understand we have to have discussions, etc. as to see as to what we are going to do. You can't jump into the well. Huh?
But Mr. Gunasekara, now 2 years, the whole point, once again we are circulating around this whole thing, 2 years have passed now.
True. You got to understand that there have been so many issues, so many problems also the government that is facing. We must be mindful of that. So that's why I said the role of Parliament, role of the opposition is to get together and work out an arrangement to see whether we can move forward.
Can you look at
the next 2-3 years?
Mr. Gunasekara, can I request you something? Can you look onto your left and tell that to Dr. Mahim Mendis?
I can.
Yeah, do it now.
Of course I can tell that.
Yeah, the opposition should. The opposition.
No, that's the role of the opposition, no?
What is the role of the opposition?
Because we are in a different. We are in a different scenario today.
Right.
We got to understand that we have to get together and say, because I don't see an election of that magnitude in the near horizon.
Yeah, we have to get together.
No way.
Yeah, we have to get together.
We have to get together. Of course, I initially said that this is a request that has to come from the president. The president himself has to come out with this
But president
request.
has said on numerous occasions for the opposition to join hands.
Yeah, no, come together. He called for a meeting then.
Yeah.
Call for a meeting. Follow it up. If he said that, follow it up. And then work out, hammer out an agreement and see whether we can do something. Because the question
Mr.
is,
Gurusekhar,
election you can always
last
do
thing we
anything.
want is agreements. 12:06 in the morning, the government signs agreements. We don't want agreements anymore. Dr. Mendes, has there been a formal invitation by the government to work collectively?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But as far as the SJB is concerned, we believe in a refined political culture.
Oh, that's right.
The leader of the opposition in parliament
Has said that.
several times, he has said, I'm prepared to talk with the government on major issues. You see, with regard to that ship, you see that was in trouble and creating unprecedented crisis to the Sri Lankan environment. I think he went to Ali Sabri's ministry and had an open discussion as to what he has to say. He's not the type of leader who wants to take undue advantage on issues, on health, on COVID. He was the first to raise in parliament, and he was prepared to offer help to the government.
But Dr. Mendes, now in politics, Dr. I know you have more experience in this political fora and arena for a long period of time. But I'm just a youngster. But what I know about politics is, if you have to look at issues, you need to take one key issue and have all the other sub issues surrounding the main issue and speak about that issue, and then talk about, example, the bond scam, for an example. That was one of the reasons that the UNP lost a lot of ground at the last elections, if Mr. Jayasuriya would agree with me. But with this opposition in power, they seem to be biting every rope or every bullet that the government is giving them to. Now, example, the sugar scam, spoken about for a few months, then completely forgotten. What is the loss that the country made as a result of the sugar scam? 15 billion. That's what the opposition is saying. It has not been substantiated, but I'm just saying what the opposition is saying. Then there were issues with regard to reversals of gazettes. Is the opposition talking about it now? No. Is the opposition talking about the sugar scam? No. Now there's a new issue. Now they're talking about a new issue, a brand new issue. So the people tend to forget these issues as well, don't you think, Dr. Mendes? And as a result of this, in the future, the SJB or the UNP or any opposition may lose grip as to what their core message should be at a future election.
Well, as you see, we are in an unprecedented situation. Crisis after crisis after crisis, every single day, crisis. What happened yesterday is soon forgotten because there's a greater crisis coming today and tomorrow, and you see, it's quite obvious that we are in politics, those outside, the political and civil society, we are losing track of the number of crises that occur.
No, but
in Sri Lankan
we've
society. What
seen.
issue is this? Let me answer.
Dr. Mendes, but we've seen. Very quick question. We've seen over the years. Now let's take a look at President Mahinda Rajapaksa. When he was the opposition leader in Sri Lanka, there was a small time frame. When Ranil Wickremesinghe was the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga was the President. So even during this time, when the gas prices went up even by 200 rupees, there was large-scale protest in Sri Lanka. And they were, these Janabala Mehemas and so on and so forth, those were launched very vigorously with a strong, firm hand. And as a result of that, governments have toppled. But is that role, do we see that role from the opposition at the moment?
Very clearly. The SJB very specifically is moving with the people, unlike any other political party, unlike the JJB, or I'm sorry to mention these parties. They are all the time on the move with the people, whether it be in the north, whether it be in Kilinochchi or in the south. No, he is moving, the party is moving on track with the people. It's not an exaggeration. You know that very well.
No,
right.
See, Dr. Mendes, my question is not about whether Sajith Premadasa goes to the north or whether he goes to the east, or whether he goes to the south, or whether he goes to the west or the upcountry, or that's not my question. My question is, does the people of the SJB, the political hierarchy, having the same vision as the leader of the opposition?
Of course, they are a team, extremely committed. And what makes you think otherwise? They are working together for the common good of the SJB and of course of the country, and they are showing the alternative policies that they would advocate, and they are not hiding what they believe in very clearly. And remember, the SJB is
How would the SJB face the financial crisis at the moment, the current dollar crisis at the moment?
Well, I'm not an economist, but of course you see the SJB...
No, but now you're saying that they are advocating this right throughout the country, Dr. Mendis. So I'm sure that you would know as to what they want to, what they're envisaging to achieve.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say, in broad terms, SJB very clearly believes in a social democratic alternative to this government or any other party. They are a very committed, passionately, ardently committed to a social democratic alternative to the regime in power, right? So when we say a social democratic alternative, we know what it stands for. Well, you know what happens in Nordic countries, and where the social democratic alternatives are practiced in a formidable manner. No development at the expense of the ordinary people of the land. A dynamic private sector, reviving of the state sector, right? Working together, generating wealth, redistribution very clearly in the highest interest of the ordinary people of the land living below poverty line, the vast mass of people below poverty line.
So, Dr. Mendis, all these words sound very nice. All these words sound very nice, and the way you articulate these words, saying passionately committed, social democratic party, very similar to what we experienced in Norway. All this is well and good. Practically, I'm asking about the policy in which how the SJB would look at the current forex crisis in the country at the moment. What would they do?
Well, obviously, if the SJB was in power, right, this wouldn't have happened because they have worked very, very cooperatively with the international community. This is a regime which is absolutely isolated by the international community. It wouldn't have happened under the SJB regime. It would have attracted investments into the country, right? Some say, well, don't talk about, you see, the glory days of President Remittances. That's exactly what he did after the insurrection, right? There was absolutely no hope for this country. But he revived the economy. We are still eating out of what he started maybe, right? The garments, for instance, at that time. Not that we are saying that it should be revived again, the garment factories. But you see, remember that there was a very clear revival process under President Ranasinghe Premadasa, right? You know that, right? So, what I'm saying is, with a different way of looking at things, a paradigm shift, social, economic, political, cultural, you see, even moral, you see, aspects with regard to using, imagine, do you think if this JB was there, right, they would have, used the presidential, powers to release people who are given death penalty, right, raping people and killing people, releasing them, using presidential powers
Dr. Mendis,
with impunity.
Yeah, Dr. Mendis, now, just as I told Mr. Gunasekara to look to his left and pose that question, I request you to look at Mr. Gunasekara onto your right and ask him that question about presidential pardons. Why don't you do that? During the Yahabali government, so you don't. It's not only during Gotabaya Rajapaksa's time that presidential pardons have been given. It has happened even during the time of President Maithripala Sirisena, and even during the time of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, even during the time of President Chandrika Bandaranayakumartunga, even during the time of the past presidents in Sri Lanka before as well. So why are you directing the finger direct?
Time.
Not during President Premadasa's time, says the former president of the Bar Association.
I didn't mention his name either. All right. Anyway, Mr. Jayasuri, yes. You want to add something to what?
Yeah, you asked a question that the presidential pardon has never been used, exercised during President Premadasa's time.
Right.
JR's time, there was only one instance that was exercised, that was Gonawala Sunil.
Yeah.
During Mrs. Kumaratunga's time also, there were one or two instances.
Yeah.
But I think mostly it has been used for during the last 2 years. But again, you are asking the question from Dr. Mendes. Can I answer the first question that you asked was about what is the future for this country between the consensus of the different political parties and the regimes. I would think that the political parties, governing party and the opposition parties should get together to formulate policy for this country at least for the next 10 years. Economic policies, the environmental policies, the taxation, so many other issues, and the FDI inflow. How are we going to attract FDIs coming into this country? The public-private partnership, how are we going to promote such partnership? Without which, because no outsider investor, prospective investor would be interested in coming to Sri Lanka, knowing very well that in Sri Lanka, the regimes keep on changing, because people have very short memories, and every now and then they keep changing the governments in power. So as a result of this, there is no continuity. So without a continuity, people won't have any trust, because we have been changing our tax structure.
Are you trying to say, Mr. Gunasekar, that we have to have the same president for a long period of time in Sri Lanka? Are you trying to say that we have to have the president of Sri Lanka for a long period of time?
What I said was that there should be a policy to be agreed upon. Governments may come and go, parties may come and go, but that policy, whichever the party that comes into power, should continue. Right? Without which, no investor is going to have confidence in coming to Sri Lanka with their investment. Because look at this situation. No sooner this government came into power, we changed the tax system. The tax slab was reduced, rather increased from 500, from 3 million, from 500,000 it went up to 3 million. As a result of which, we lost 25% of our revenue. So we had to get it from other places.
Pay was scrapped overnight.
Pay was. Did the benefit go to the people? No, it didn't go to the people. It stayed at a different level.
Yeah, Mr. Jayasuri, now just to clarify on this whole national policy solution which you are proposing, you said that we must bring both opposition and government parliamentarians together. Now, I think when it comes to elections and when parties are contesting at polls, they put forward promises and that is the basis on which people vote for whoever the government is coming into power. And most of these promises are made on policies. So if you say that, let's say, under this government, say next week or in the coming months, hypothetically, opposition and government parliamentarians, they came together and they formulated what is called as a national policy, right? Do you think there is a need for elections after that, if a national policy has been formed? Because most of these promises are based on the policies.
Different parties, how they implement the policies would be different. You may reach the goal, the same goal, but in different parts. So the different people have different modus operandi in application of how they achieve the final target. Again, issues like corruption, the rule of law, the independence of the judiciary. Now, those are issues everyone will agree that there should be an independent judiciary. But whether that is achieved or not, whether that is reality is different. Now, you know, 17th Amendment brought in the Constitutional Council. That was done away with the 18th Amendment. Then 19th Amendment brought it back again. Then the 20th Amendment came, again done away. Where is the consistency? So, can people be happy about the independence of our country's judicial system? Then the rule of law. You know, there have been so many dents all over the place. Now, even talking about the economy, right? Now, look at the situation where this same situation, there have been so many economies that have come out and then explained in detail and said, there have been many situations that have arisen like the one we are going through today. But that in all such situations, the people of the country did not have to go through this amount of hardships. Why? They had a way of bailing out of the situation. I can remember in 2001 when the Vikramasinghe government came into power, there was a two there was an aid consortium that was formulated with Japan and US presiding. We were promised $4.5 billion to be given to our country.
Japanese.
What happened was immediately the Chandraka regime dissolved the government, and then all that went down the drain. Now again, when this government came to, even during the previous government time, we had monorail project. $1.8 billion were coming to this country from Japan. Now,
but don't forget,
during that same regime, that was changed to light rail. Then again, agreements were signed. Then this government came in. That light rail project was also abandoned.
Now,
where are we heading?
But just to clarify about the Japanese-US aid conference, that was purely done, Mr. Jayasuriya, after the peace deal was signed with the LTTE, because on the pretext of bringing forth FDIs to develop the North and East region was the reason that the Japanese aid conference was held with the US at that time in Sri Lanka during the Ranil Wickremesinghe regime.
Yes, but still it was before the war victory in 2009.
Yeah, before the
war victory. So this kind of situation we have been going through time and again. But after the dissolution of that regime, we lost all that. So again, what I'm trying to say is there has to be a consensus between all parties with regard to the national policy of what we are going to do within the next 10 years or 15 years. Let the parties come and go. Let the leaders come and go. But we have a country to protect. We have people to protect. Otherwise, biggest issue that this government is facing, and also the decision that they have taken, is come what may, we will or we shall not go to IMF.
Right.
Now, IMF is not such a dragon that is going to impose difficulties on the people of this country. That is an organization that was formed after the World War II to help the nations that are having economic problems.
But Mr. Jayasuriya, do you think the government can really expect the opposition parties to help them at this time when the government itself is reversing its own decisions? They make a decision in the morning and change it by night.
So this is the problem. This is the problem. So if they can't implement their own decisions with consistency, I do not know how they can come to a round table or whatever kind of consensus or unison in agreeing about the policy of the government for the future 10 or 15 years. So this is the need of the hour. I think we must inculcate this amongst the people when they are looking for whichever the parties that they may have, whichever the leaders that they may have in mind. Forget all that. You are asking about the third force. No, it's not all that. Policy, not the people. Don't think who is right. Think what is right. Look at what we can achieve. These are the principles. Now, giving all these the facilities to the members of parliament, vehicle permits, security, free lunches, scrap them all. Ministers, how many vehicles, security contingencies, scrap them all. The ministers spend like nothing. Not only this government, even previous regime, this was happening. Don't give them any personal budgets. Have a situation where every ministry is to be advised by a professional group of people. And if laws are to be changed, that should be identified by that professional group of people. That should be statutorily demarcated, right, so that the ministers cannot take ad hoc decisions and change laws or issue regulations to suit their whims and fancies.
Right. Mr. Jayasuriya, I think taking a cue from what you said, I would like to pose a question to Dr. Mahim Mendis. Do you agree with what Mr. Jayasuriya is saying? Do you believe that there needs to be a national policy formulated with the agreement or the consensus of government and opposition parties?
Very, very clearly.
Has the Samagi Jana Balawegya done anything to inculcate that thought into the rural masses of our country? What
very
steps
clearly,
has the party taken?
The SJB leadership has articulated this very clearly just a week ago, addressing a number of civil and political society groups at Janaki Hotel. He was talking about the need for a new social contract, Nava Samaja Samutya. Right, okay, now in that what he was articulating happened to be that there has to be a difference in the way we approach social, economic, political, cultural and even moral problems confronting the people. There needs to be the broadest possible consensus. Of course, a principled leadership, a principled political party right, with grand principles. We can talk in terms of an ethos. What grand principles we believe in. Of course, that should come from a political party, a very strong political party that has public acceptance, and then work towards a greater public consensus.
Yes, but Dr. Mendes, now at the end of the day, it's the people who are casting the vote. So isn't it the duty of the opposition, like Mr. Jayasuriya pointed out, isn't it the duty of the opposition to inculcate the thought among the people? To tell them, look, we need a national policy and this is why you should be voting for.
Yes, that is exactly what we are doing now.
Has the Samvijana Balawegya done that?
That is what we are doing.
Drafting it, no?
Right
in the
now.
process of drafting it, no?
Yes, and we are also now, apart from the agriculture charter that was presented to the people, right, we have also presented the youth charter, the women's charter, like that. We have very clearly, told the people what we believe in, and also, we have invited people from other parties to attend these and see for themselves where they can agree. It's not just for our party only. It's a national policy. We are working towards a new national consensus. So that is what we are trying to impress on the people. Like what Mr. Upul Jayasuriya said, we want the policy to be supreme, not whether so and so ABC is telling what is right, but the ABC is important to provide leadership, but what is of great importance is the policy and the consensus on that.
Mr. Gunasekara, do you agree with the two gentlemen on to your left?
I have always been saying that continuously. Policy is fundamental, it's key. We need to understand these are things that have been not taken place for many years.
Because now the government...
On this matter of foreign exchange, you asked this question, but there was no proper response. But I feel the question is we have to understand, the government needs to understand that there are 3 or 4 sectors that brings them foreign exchange. One is exports, 2 is remittances, and 3 is tourism. 2 are hit very badly, and FDIs. Of course, you can't expect FDIs to come at this juncture, because when Standard & Poor downgrades us continuously, I don't think anybody is going to come to invest in this country. So we have another issue. What's the issue? Tourism and remittances have taken a beating. I don't think any of those things are going to improve. So what is left is to go to the agencies, World Bank, and tell them, look here, coming to
World Bank, IMF,
and get several countries involved in this whole process and see, okay, we are going to change our policy as well. We are also going, our human rights track record has to be improved. All those things we'll have to do. And then, okay, we will try to see whether we can build up this country. Then things can change. But you have to take those decisions.
So you have
and
to
take those decisions, you need everybody get together and discuss this matter.
So you have
because at this moment, what is happening is the central bank, everybody is trying to see whether they can do a konekade business in this country, no? That's all. You think what else is happening? They need to understand this is a far more greater issue. For the next 2 years, I'm not going to see improvement on the remittances and tourism. So we are in serious trouble.
Because now
we are in serious trouble.
Now the government, Mr. Gunasekara, is promoting cycling. So first thing they have to do is get all the parliamentarians to come from their homes to the parliament in their cycles, as Mr. Gunasekara said.
Can I ask, very simple, I don't know who said this, but do we have provision to park our bicycles in Colombo?
Let me say one thing about...
Thousands and thousands of bicycles. Am I right?
Let me say one thing about my friend Lal said about the FNP rating and then whether the FDIs are going to come into this country or not. No, I'm not negative at all. I'm not negative at all. Let's prove FNP rating, S&P rating is wrong. Let's prove that Fitch rating can be improved. How are we going to do that? We can do that only by focusing about the constraints that we are facing, the investors are facing. Put them right. Put our house into order. without which you can't invite anybody to come here and then put their money here. We have to make them feel that their monies are safe in this country. They can bring their dollars, they can take their dollars at any time. If you keep on putting restrictions from the central bank as we have done it now, nobody is going to trust this country as a safe haven to invest their dollars in this country. So the only way out at this moment to get out of this situation is to increase our exports and to improve our FDIs into the country, because every other country in the region has done it better during the COVID situation than we have done it. So why can't we do it? We can't do it simply because our house is in a bloody mess. Because we have to identify where we have gone wrong. You know, every month the BOI is cancelling more than 15, at least 10 to 15 agreements that they have signed under Section 17. So we have to get at the bottom of it, to see why we have to cancel them, why they couldn't start off. Because people go from place to place and everywhere, whether it's a CEB, whether it's a local authority, or whether it's an environmental authority, whether it's the GSMB, or everywhere they are asking for bribes. And they are taking months or Sundays to approve their projects. So that is why I suggested that even under the BOI law there should be deemed approvals. If they don't give the approval within a 1 week time, let it go to the board of directors and let them give the approval, and that approval should be honored by every institution. And if they fail to honor that the approval that have been given by the board of directors of BOI, let them be charged for corruption. Let that be an offense, a chargeable offense. If not for which, if we are not going to take that kind of strong steps in the promotion and then putting our house into order, we are not going to attract any investor to come to this country. Have it written down. It's not going to change.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts thus far. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back.
One disinfectant to keep your hands, home surfaces, electronic devices and personal belongings safe from bacteria, virus and fungi. Sri Lanka's first SLS certified disinfectant, now with lemon fresh and ice pine fresh fragrances. Sun all-purpose disinfectant spray.
COVID-19 සඳහා ආරක්ෂිත පියවර. ජනයා වැඩි වශයෙන් සිටින ස්ථානයන්හි ගැවසීම මගහරින්න. රෝගය ආසාදිත පුද්ගලයන් හමුවීමට නොයන්න. මුහුණ, මුඛය, නාසය සහ ඇස් ඇල්ලීමෙන් වළකින්න. අනවශ්‍ය ගමන් බිමන් යෑමෙන් වළකින්න. මුඛාවරණය ඉදිරිපස ඇල්ලීමෙන් වළකින්න.
එළියේ හීනියට වහින වැහි පොද මුළු හිතම හිරිවට්ටල දානවා අප්පච්චි.
ඉස්සර මට හිටියේ එක පුතයි දුවලා දෙන්නයි. දැන් පුතු 4 දෙනයි දුවලා 4 දෙනෙක් ලැබෙනවා.
මේ උඹට පොඩ්ඩක් පුළුවන්ද මේ ලෝකෙට පොඩ්ඩක් ඇවිල්ලා යන්න? ඇඩ්වර්ටයිසින් කරන්න නැත්තම් මැරෙයිද? ඔය දෙකේම වැඩි වෙනසක් නෑ මල්ලි. ඒක නෙමෙයි. ආවයි හාවිකෝ.
මම පුරුදු වෙනවා. සත්තයි.
මම මේ ඔය ළමයින්ගේ හොඳට මේවා කියන්නේ. ඔය ගෑනු ළමයා පල්ලගෙන යන වැඩේ නම් හරියන්නේ නෑ.
සුදු හාමිනේ එකපාරටම වෙනස් වුණේ කොහොමද? මේ තරම් ඉක්මනට මේ වගේ ලොකු වෙනසක්?
Before I go into the final round, I have one more question from one of our viewers to Mr. Gunasekara. Mr. Gunasekara, given today that we are in a dilemma, all three agree that there are fuel issues, there are electricity cuts, there are energy issues, there are long queues. Do we really need an Independence Day celebrations in Sri Lanka at the moment? What about the fuel cost for planes, army vehicles, fuel for 5-day rehearsals, etc.? Is this prudent when the country is suffering? Why is so much of pomp and pageantry just for nothing?
Independence on a low scale, yes. Independence on a usual scale, no. I'm not in agreement. Low scale, yes. You need to have.
Why?
The question is this, most of
we are talking about, we just spoke about, Mr. Gunasekara, about saving fuel.
Yeah.
Saving energy, so on and so forth.
Correct.
And you are saying having independence in a low scale is fine, but having independence in a large scale is not right.
No, independence is something that has been celebrated every year. That's why I said low scale.
Can't we give a miss?
Pardon?
Can't we give a miss?
But if everybody agrees, you can give a miss. But I said low scale doesn't have any of those expenses, no? When you have it low scale, very simple.
Define low scale.
Define?
I'm just kidding. I'm just
if you want, I'll define it.
No, you don't have to define.
No, the question is this,
because that will be very
many
subjective.
Politicians don't understand that there are certain things that you have to forego. Forego them. That's all. You got to understand that.
Mr. Gunasekara,
we are not in a position to have all those.
Mr. Gunasekara, I thought I can bring an example from the Maharaj organization itself. I think we have this event called the Executive of the Year Award Ceremony every year. And we have postponed it for 2 years now because of COVID. And that's an event that is held across
I know.
In Sri Lanka, and you know that it's a big event for the executives who are working for the Maharaj organization. However,
they look forward to it.
They look forward to it as well. And they postponed it for 2 years because of COVID, because the country was not doing well, and even it was a time for the company to be resilient in a situation like that. So when private sector companies are doing this, why isn't the governance structure in Sri Lanka or the government in power resort to something of this sort? It's no one is going to hate the government for not having an Independence Day celebration.
I know, but that's the role of the opposition as well, to tell the government.
I would love to ask Dr. Mendes, if you all were in power.
No, don't ask him. It's not correct. No, yeah. It's as I said, the role of the opposition is to point out those things.
Yeah.
That is why you get into an agreement. I still feel that you have to get into an agreement with the president. No, some sort of an arrangement, discussion, all those things must take place.
Right. Anyway, we have to move to the final round. I start off the final round. No interruptions to the three gentlemen. You all can recap, rebut, and also sum up your thoughts in the first 2 hours of this show tonight. Let's start off with President's Counsel, Mr. Puljaya Surya, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Your final thoughts. Way forward for Sri Lanka.
The way forward, I think we have to identify certain areas of our economy and then improve in whatever we have to do. I'll start from the education. In Sri Lanka, there are more than, at any given time, there are about 70,000 students, Sri Lankan students, who are studying overseas. Why are they going overseas? Because they want to get that kind of qualification. Why can't they get it in Sri Lanka? Because none of those universities are allowed to come and then start their education in Sri Lanka. I know at Mirigama zone there were the British university that was given, they signed the agreement that they were given 20 acres to start their university. They ran off because of the conduct of a certain trade union, this so-called Provincial union, the GMOA. And there was Deakin University. They came here to set up their university, they went off. Then Manipal University, they came here to set up, they went off. Now, for a year, we are spending something like $2 billion on these students every year. Now, in any other country, take USA, UK, Australia, Malaysia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, they are attracting foreign students. We are not attracting, we are sending our students to all those countries for education. So that's one area. The other one is again improvement of, we have to be practical. In enticing the investors to come into this country, we have to put our house into order and then show that we are ready to accept you and we will protect you. And also the government has to be responsible and sensitive to the needs of the investors. If they agree, if they enter into an agreement with the foreign investor, they must make sure that they have to honor the terms of that agreement. But unfortunately, there have been situations where they have violated the terms of the agreement. The investors have to go to court and they get redress, and the court orders that are given mostly by the Commercial High Court have been affirmed by the Supreme Court, but the government has not honored them. So in such a situation, in such a scenario, we are inviting the public-private partnership between the foreign investment and also the government of Sri Lanka. So people are not going to trust the government to come with their dollars and then park them here. There are so many other things that you have to look at, particularly the BOI law has to be changed to make it more practical, bringing in, as I told you earlier, bringing in the deemed approval process and then incorporating certain offences if the decision of the BOI is not honoured by the respective organisations, including local government or the CAB, the Environmental Authority and whatnot. If they are not honoured and then acted upon by those respective institutions, they must be made a punishable offence, without which, and in Singapore they are inviting investors to come to their country and then invest. They send their air tickets. Here in Sri Lanka, we don't have to go around the world and then keep on enticing the investors to come here. There are people coming to this country, coming to our own doorstep and then trying to invest in Sri Lanka. But the problem is, I'm not particularly pointing at a particular regime, but then and now, previous regime and even now, every time they come, from the time they come and land here in Sri Lanka, people are asking for bribes, without which you can't practically put your investment proposal into action. So if you don't identify these areas and put them right, I don't think we are going to improve the investments, without which we can't bring in the dollar inward remittances into this country. Right. So forget the increase in the exports. Government sector has increased about $1 billion. It has gone down, but the future for Sri Lanka is IT. In IT industry, we have had contribution to the GDP $1.5 billion, whereas government sector $4.4 billion, but the contribution to the GDP is about only 20% out of that. But in the IT sector, the contribution to the GDP is 100%. Right? Now, for instance, you may not know that in Sri Lanka, when I was at the BOI, we approved a project called the part of the London Stock Exchange back office. Do you know that in Sri Lanka at this moment of time, there are 1,700 local personnel, young men and women are working in that outfit. The entire back office of the London Stock Exchange is in Sri Lanka. So we have to entice these people. I gave them the letter. One day a gentleman walked into my office and said, I want to bring the London Stock Exchange part of it to Sri Lanka. Help me. I said, what's the help you want? I said, no, give me a letter. I said, you have not even signed an application. I got down an application, got him to fill it. And then he wanted the letter. I gave him the letter he wanted. He brought the investment, and the 1,600 people are now working there. So like that, you have to be practical. You have to think out of the box and then accommodate these people, without which we are doomed.
And as a result of the London Stock Exchange activities now, Mr. Jayasuriya, there are Sri Lankans migrating to London as well.
Not only London, every country. Every country is offering our young men salaries over 500,000 rupees or 800,000 rupees. They are grabbing. So we have to, along with the university degrees, history, geography, literature, whatever, have a parallel IT degree. Right. Because the university facilities are not utilized. 70% of the university facilities are unutilized. They give them a parallel degree. That's our future.
If you look at it, Mr. Gunasekara, Jayasuriya, you was talking about corruption. Now, the Sri Lankan Hambantota port was constructed at a cost of 1.2 billion, and the Chinese only bought it back from the Sri Lankan government for 1 billion. So, who took the 200 million Dollars is a big question mark. Anyway, I now move my attention to Dr. Mahin Mendis, representing the Samag Jana Balawega. Your final thoughts.
Let me very clearly tell, especially the young people of this country, not to lose hope. There is potential for paradigm shift, a new social contract, as I said. Some of us working with SJB are people who have come back to the country having completed our doctorates. In my case, I was fully funded by the Singapore government for my PhD, National University of Singapore, came back to Sri Lanka in the thick of war. I'm very, very happy to be here and do something that will help the people rise up and uplifted. So I'm telling the people, especially the young people, not to go in search of greener pastures. That is not an honorable thing to do. We of this JB advocate that we should work together. There is enormous hope for Sri Lanka through a paradigm shift, a new policy, a new social, political, economic, cultural and moral order. And we are passionate and committed to that. And very importantly, I think we should understand that nothing can be done without the ethos, the grand principles that we believe in. Without the grand principles, coming specifically through a compassionate and a caring leader, we have that in Mr. Premadasa. What we are saying is that we need to be very clear, we are very clear about the type of, I have already mentioned that we believe in a viable social democratic alternative, and we believe through that policy, grand principles, structures that are viable. We see that without structural changes, the necessary constitutional amendments, we cannot achieve anything. There's so much, it's like an unflushed toilet. There is so much that needs to be flushed out and bring an honorable order, right? And also, we believe in getting the functions of these structures very clearly sorted out so that we will also have the right people manning those stations. We cannot allow family bandism, cronyisms, nepotism in this country in the way it has happened for many years. We believe in meritocracy, and we are hopeful that things can be changed even now with a regime change which is principled enough, believes in grand principles, reaching consensus through consultation and entering into compromise and working closely with the international community. We are not anti-East and anti-West. What matters to the SJB is the national interest. We are prepared to cooperate fully, whether it be the US government, whether it be China, whether it be India, but what matters to the SJB is the national interest and how it will benefit the ordinary people of this country. Not entering into all types of agreements and arrangements at a severe cost to the dignity of the nation. So that is my message on behalf of the SJB just before the independence.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Mahin Mendis. I now move attention to Mr. Kesarala Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament, now Councillor, Deola Mount Lena Municipal Council, representing the SLFP.
Shamil, it's, well, it is a very difficult task for me to say so many things, but I have right throughout been mentioning this fact that changing governments is not going to be the answer for this country. In that context, the government also has to understand that their approach on various sectors is also flawed, and therefore they need to correct themselves. As to whether they are prepared to correct, I don't know. But if they don't correct, it is a serious issue, I feel. We have to understand that this country needs more than anything else foreign exchange. And in that context, as I said earlier, remittances and tourism is not going to work for the next 1 or 2 years. In that backdrop, I feel for FDIs to come, we have to go before the World Bank. We have to go before the IMF and tell them to come into some sort of an arrangement as to how we are going to change our policies. Because if we don't change our policies, especially on human rights, because we are facing a huge issue on that front, these things needs to be reversed. And if we can reverse, we are prepared to reverse, maybe countries like US, countries like Japan will come together and assist this country. They have done that in the past, and they would do so in the future as well. Unless we change, we are not going to bring the country out of this morass. We need to understand that the central bank also needs to understand, having movements of this nature where you are trying to approach countries for handouts, etc., is not going to be the answer. It is not going to be the answer. And the president needs to understand, unless we move into a solid program of activity where we change so many policies and principles, we will not be able to pull the country out of this mess. It's a serious issue.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kesala Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament, Council of the Deville Mountain Municipal Council. Thank you very much, Dr. Mahi Mendis, Samagi Jana Balavegia, representing the SJB, as well as Mr. Pul Jayasuriya, President's Council, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, as well as the former Chairman of the Board of Investments in Sri Lanka. A very quick question to Dr. Mendis before we go. Dr. Mendis, academic activities have not resumed for students to come into universities and study. However, schools have been opened right now. Those who have not been even vaccinated are being told to come to school. However, those who have been vaccinated above the ages of 18 years and above are not being told to come to universities. Is there any rationale behind this?
It is extremely unfair with regard to the 15 national universities. The university undergraduates are longing to come back and start work. If the schools can be open, well, there is no reason why the universities cannot be open. And the university students know how to look after themselves. They will know, unlike school children, how to protect themselves. University education cannot be on Zoom. Universities need number of faculties, not just in social sciences, humanities and culture and arts. You see, we need dynamic discourse. We need extremely lively debates, discussion. We are asking the government not to render university education meaningless and useless, and not to fear democratic student movements. That is the reason why, as I see, the government is not prepared to get the students back to the university through fear of democratic protests. We are asking the government not to violate the fundamental rights of the students.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahi Mendis. Given the fact that the SLFP may like to sit independent in the future if things go wrong, you all technically only have to convince 23 members of the government in Parliament to cross over. If that happens, the SJB can form a government way before the next 3 years. Just a simple thought.
That will definitely happen.
Before we wrap up the show tonight, so there is always a possibility if the SLFP all supports. Only 23 members are needed from the government if the SLFP supports the SJB in Parliament. So having said that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Face the Nation. On to my immediate right was Naveksha, on to my immediate left was Hassan. Thank you very much, gentlemen and the lady, for joining us this evening on Face the Nation. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. There are 4 ingredients to true leadership. 1, brains, soul, heart, and good nerves. Does our country leadership have it? Food for thought. Take care and good night.